The metal chair scraped against the cold floor as the alien prisoner shifted uncomfortably. Its blue-gray skin gleamed under the harsh white lights of the interrogation room. Commander Park Ji-ho sat across the small table, his hands folded calmly, while his dark eyes studied the creature before him. The alien was tall, maybe 7 feet, with long thin arms and legs that bent in ways that made Ji-ho's stomach turn. Its head was shaped like an upside-down teardrop, with fur black eyes ranged in a diamond pattern. When it breathed, small slits along its neck opened and closed like gills. "My name is Commander Park Ji-ho of the Earth Defense Force," he said slowly, making sure the translation device on the table picked up every word. "What is your name?" The alien's mouth moved in a way that reminded Ji-ho of a fish gasping for air. When it spoke, the translator turned its strange clicking sounds into words. "I am Velthan of the Third Fleet. But names do not matter now." Dr. Kim Minji sat in the corner of the room, watching the alien's vital signs on her tablet. The readings showed extreme stress levels. Whatever this creature had seen in battle had left deep marks on its mind. "Tell us about the war," Ji-ho said, leaning forward slightly. "Tell us about what happened on Kepler Station." Velthan's eyes all focused on the commander at once. The effect was unsettling, like being watched by some ancient predator. "You want to know about the war? There was no war. What your people did, that was something else. Something wrong." The alien's long fingers drummed nervously on the metal table. Each finger ended in a sharp claw that scraped the surface with tiny scratching sounds. "My fleet came to your station expecting normal battle," Velthan continued. "We sent messages of challenge. As is proper, we announced our intention to claim your territory through honorable combat. Your response was..." The alien paused, searching for words. "Your response was madness." Sergeant Lee Sang-min, who stood guard by the door, shifted uncomfortably. He had been at Kepler Station. He knew what the alien was talking about. "Your warriors came from places we could not see," Velthan said, its voice growing quieter. "They crawled out of air vents, from underfloor panels, from inside the walls themselves. They covered their faces with metal masks painted to look like skulls. They made sounds that hurt our ears. Sounds like dying animals." Ji-ho kept his face blank, but inside he felt a small chill. He had read the battle reports, but hearing it from the enemy's perspective made it sound different, darker. "When we shot them, they did not fall down and die as proper warriors should," the alien went. They kept moving, kept fighting. Some would pull out their own weapons and throw them at us like spears. Others would grab our soldiers and pull them close, then activate explosive devices." Dr. Kim looked up from her tablet, her face pale. The alien's heart rate was climbing dangerously high as it relived these memories. "One of your females was shot in the chest," Velthan said, its full eyes now staring at something only it could see. "The wound should have killed her instantly. Instead, she used her own blood to write symbols on the wall behind her. Then she laughed. She laughed while she died." The room was completely quiet except for the soft hum of the air recycling system. Even Sang-min had stopped shifting by the door. "But the worst part was not the fighting," the alien whispered. "The worst part was after. When we tried to help our wounded, your people had left traps, medical supplies that exploded when touched, bodies that had been turned into bombs. Even your dead were weapons." Ji-ho felt his throat go dry. "What do you mean?" "Your fallen warriors," Velthan explained, its voice shaking now. "We tried to move them with respect, as warriors should treat the honored dead. But they had been fitted with devices. When we touched them, they released clouds of poison gas. Your people had turned their own corpses into weapons against us. Double quotes. Dr. Kim's tablet beeped softly as the alien's stress levels reached critical readings. She caught Jiho's and shook her head slightly, warning him to be careful. "Why are you telling us this?" Jiho asked gently, all for a Velthan's eyes focused on him again. "Because you need to understand what you are. My people have fought many wars across many worlds. We know battle. We know death. We know victory and defeat. But what you humans do is not war. It is something else, something that changes you, though." Ilian leaned forward as much as its restraints would allow. "You do not just fight to win. You fight to make sure your enemies never want to fight you again. You fight to put fear into the hearts of every creature that might threaten you. You turn everything you touch into a weapon, even yourselves." Velthan's voice dropped to barely a whisper. "We did not surrender because we could not win. We surrendered because we realized that to beat you, we would have to become like you. And that scared us more than dying." The interrogation room fell, silent again, the weight of the alien's words hanging in the air like smoke. Lieutenant Kim Dae-sun pulled up the tactical display as Velthan continued speaking. The alien's eyes were focused on the ceiling now, as if it could see the metal and into space where the battle had taken place 6 months ago. New Horizon Colony was supposed to be an easy target, Velthan said, its voice flattened, emotionless. Just farmers and miners, soft humans who would surrender quickly when they saw our ships. Corporal Young Hee-jin took notes from her position by the wall. She had been part of the relief force that arrived after the battle. What she found there still gave her nightmares. "We came in 3 battle groups," the alien continued, 47 ships total. "Your colony had maybe 2,000 people, mostly civilians. We expected them to evacuate or surrender within hours." Commander Park Ji-ho watched the alien's vital signs on Dr. Kim's tablet. Even though Velthan was trying to sound calm, its body was showing signs of severe stress. "Tell us what happened when you landed," Ji-ho prompted. Velthan's claws scraped against the table again. "We sent ground troops to the main settlement. Standard procedure. Take control of key buildings. Secure the population. Wait for surrender terms." But when our soldiers reached the town center, it was empty. The alien paused, its breathing becoming faster through the slits in its neck. Then the screaming started. Sergeant Lee Sun-min, who had been standing quietly by the door, felt his muscles tense. He knew this part of the story from the human side. "Your people came out of holes in the ground," Velthan said, its eyes now fixed on Ji-ho with disturbing intensity. "But they were not dressed like soldiers. They wore the clothes of farmers, of children, of old people. Some had painted their faces with mud and blood. Others wore masks made from animal skulls." Dr. Kim checked her readings again. The alien's heart was beating dangerously fast now. "They made sounds we had never heard before," Velthan continued. "Not battle cries or war songs like proper warriors. They howled like wounded beasts. They screamed words in your language that our translators could not understand. Later we learned they were the names of their dead." The alien's long fingers began to shake slightly. "Our soldiers fired at them, but they kept coming. Even when hit, they kept moving forward. One of your males took 3 plasma shots to the chest and still managed to tackle one of my warriors. He bit through the warrior's throat armor with his teeth." Young Hee-jin stopped writing for a moment. The official reports had mentioned hand-to-hand combat, but this was the first time she had heard details like this. "Then we saw your children," Velthan whispered. The room went completely silent. Even the air recycling system seemed to quiet down. "Your young ones, barely old enough to walk, carrying explosive devices. They would run toward our soldiers, smiling and laughing, then detonate themselves. We tried not to shoot them, tried to capture them safely. But the alien's voice trailed off. "What happened?" Jiho asked softly. They had been taught to see us as monsters. Their parents had told them that dying to kill us was the greatest honor they could achieve. Some of them sang songs as they ran toward our lines with bombs strapped to their bodies. Dr. Kim made a note on her tablet. The psychological impact on the alien forces must have been devastating. But the worst was your female warriors, Velthan continued, its voice barely audible now. They fought differently than your males, more calculated, more cruel. The alien looked directly at young Hee-jin. One of them, wounded and surrounded, pretended to surrender. When our medic came to help her, she activated a chemical weapon hidden in her clothing. The medic died screaming as his skin melted. She watched him die and smiled. Young Hee-jin felt sick. She had read about chemical weapons being used, but hearing it described this way made it real in a horrible way. Another female used her own children as bait. Velthan said, its claws now digging small grooves in the metal table. She sent them running toward our positions, crying for help. When our soldiers moved to rescue them, she triggered explosives she had planted in the ground. The children died with our warriors. Some men clenched his fists. He wanted to defend his people, to explain that desperate situations called for desperate measures. But the alien's pain was so real, so raw, that he could not find words. By the end of the first day, we had lost more soldiers than in our previous 3 campaigns combined, Velthan said. But that was not the worst part. The worst part was what your people did to our dead. The alien's eyes closed, all at the same time, as if it could shut out the memories. They took our fallen warriors and changed them, cut them apart, used pieces of them to make new weapons, wore parts of their armor as decorations. One of your males made a necklace from the teeth of my squad leader. The alien opened its eyes. Again, looking directly at Jiho, we began to understand that we were not fighting soldiers. We were fighting an entire species that had decided we needed to die. Every human on that planet, from the oldest to the youngest, had become a weapon. Pointed at us, Velthan's voice dropped to a whisper. That was when we realized we had made a terrible mistake coming to your world. Dr. Kim Minji watched the alien's stress level spike as Velthan began the next part of its story. The creatures for eyes had taken on a glassy look, as if it was seeing something far away and terrible. After New Horizon, my commanders thought they understood your tactics, Velthan said, its voice hollow. They decided to use proper siege warfare, surround a human position, cut off supplies. Wait for surrender, simple and clean. Major Choi Soon-ho, who had joined the interrogation, leaned forward in his chair. He had been the commanding officer at Firebase Echo during the siege. The official reports called it a tactical victory. But the cost had been enormous. Firebase Echo was a small outpost. The alien continued. 37 humans defending a communications station on a worthless rock planet. We brought 400 warriors, the best of our 3rd fleet. It should have been over in days. Velthan's claws made soft clicking sounds against the table as it remembered. We set up a perfect siege ring. No way in or out. No supply drops possible. We waited for your people to run out of food and water, then surrender like rational beings. Corporal Park So-young, who had been the medic at Firebase Echo, felt her stomach tighten. She knew what was coming next. On the 3rd day, your people started broadcasting messages, Velthan said. Not military communications or surrender terms, personal messages, stories about the humans inside the base. The aliens' breathing became faster through the slits in its neck. They told us about Private Kim J1, who had a daughter back on Earth who was learning to walk, about Sergeant Lee Youngmin, who was supposed to get married in 2 months, about Dr. Honmira, who had left her job at a hospital to serve in the military because she wanted to help people. Commander Park Ji-ho frowned. Why would they broadcast personal information? Because they wanted us to know who we were killing, Velthan replied. It's for eyes focusing on him with disturbing intensity. They wanted us to understand that every human in that base was someone's child, someone's parent, someone's love. They made us see them as people, not just enemy soldiers. The alien's voice grew quieter at first. We thought it was just human weakness, emotional display that would make them easier to defeat. But then we started losing soldiers. Dr. Kim checked her readings. The alien's heart rate was climbing again. But not as dangerously as before. It seemed to be adapting to the stress of remembering. Your people had planted listening devices round our camp. Velthan continued. They could hear everything we said. When our warriors talked about the human messages, when they showed sympathy or doubt, your people would target those specific warriors in the next attack. Sunho felt a chill run down his spine. He had not known about the psychological targeting. That had not been in any of the reports he had read. One of my soldiers, Krelvan, was especially affected by the story of Dr. Honmira. He said it reminded him of his own mate back home. The next day, during a human raid, every shot seemed aimed at him specifically. They killed him slowly, taking out his legs first, then his arms. Then finally his head. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of machinery. Even the guards by the door had stopped moving. By the 5th day, we were afraid to talk about the humans at all. Velthan said, but that was when they started Phase 2 of their plan. Phase 2, Ji-ho asked. They began making weapons from their own medical supplies, the alien explained. Your doctor, Honmira, was creating chemical compounds from pain medication and cleaning fluids. They would put these mixtures in metal containers and launch them at our positions using improvised core catapults. So Young remembered those desperate days. They had been running out of everything: food, water, ammunition. Dr. Han had worked day and night to find new ways to fight. The chemicals did not kill quickly. Velthan continued, its voice shaking now. They caused burns that would not heal, pain that our medical treatments could not stop. Some of my warriors begged to be executed rather than suffer. The alien paused, its eyes closing as if it could shut out the memories. But the worst part was the music. Music, Sunho asked, confused. Your people had a small radio in the base. Velthan explained. At night, they would play human songs. Not war music or propaganda. Gentle songs about love, about home, about peace. Songs that made my warriors think of their families, the aliens. Claws were now digging deep grooves in the metal table. They would play these songs while they launched chemical attacks. The combination of beautiful music and horrible death broke something in my soldiers' minds. Some of them started crying. Others refused to fight. A few even tried to desert. Velthan opened its eyes again, looking directly at Sunho. By the 2nd week, we were not fighting a military unit anymore. We were fighting ghosts who used our own emotions against us. Your people had turned our capacity for feeling into a weapon. The alien's voice dropped to barely a whisper when Firebase Echo finally fell. We found only 12 humans still alive. The other 25 had died defending their position. But those 12 had held off 100 of our best warriors for 18 days. Velthan looked round the room at all the human faces watching it. That was when we began to understand that defeating your species might be impossible. The lights in the interrogation room seemed to dim as Velthan prepared to tell the most difficult part of its story. Dr. Kim Minji noticed that the alien's fries had begun to twitch, a sign of extreme psychological distress in its species. After Firebase Echo, my fleet commanders thought they finally understood human tactics, Velthan said, its voice barely above a whisper. They decided to use overwhelming force. No more small battles, no more sieges, just complete destruction. Colonel Yun Wujin had joined the interrogation for this part. He had been part of the relief force that found the aftermath of what the aliens were about to describe. The images still haunted his dreams. We brought our entire Third Fleet to the human colony in Kepler-7. The alien continued. 15,000 warriors against a settlement of maybe 800 humans. We planned to end it quickly and move on to the next target. Velthan Claus had stopped making noise against the table. Instead, the creature sat perfectly still, as if movement itself might bring back the terrible memories. The first 3 days went as expected. It said, we destroyed their power stations, their communication towers, their defensive positions. The humans retreated into the underground tunnels beneath their city. We thought we had won. Lieutenant Park Ejin, who was taking notes, looked up from her tablet. She had studied the battle reports from Kepler-7. The official casualty numbers were classified, but she knew they were horrific on both sides. Then your people ran out of normal weapons. Velthan continued, its breathing becoming irregular. But instead of surrendering, they started making new ones from things we had left behind. The aliens' eyes focused on something beyond the walls of the room. Your engineers took our plasma conduits and turned them into bombs. They used our communication equipment to create weapons that could disrupt our nervous systems. They even took armor from our dead soldiers and wore it themselves. Commander Park Ji-ho felt his throat go dry. They used your own technology against you. Not just used it, Velthan replied, its voice growing stronger with anger. They improved it, made it more deadly. Your people understood our weapons better than we did after just a few days of studying them. The alien paused, its breathing becoming faster through the slits in its neck. But that was not the breaking point. The breaking point came when your medical teams arrived. Dr. Kim looked up from her readings with concern. The alien stress levels were approaching dangerous territory again. Under the Galactic War conventions, medical personnel are protected. Velthan explained, medical shuttles cannot be attacked. Medical facilities must be respected. This is basic civilized behavior that all species follow. The alien's claws began to scrape against the table again, making tiny scratching sounds. Your medical teams came in clearly marked shuttles, white vehicles with red crosses, broadcasting medical identification codes. We held our fire as required by law. Wujin leaned forward slightly. He had been in one of those medical shuttles. The first shuttle landed near our command center. Velthan continued. We watched it through our scopes, expecting to see medical personnel evacuating wounded humans. Instead, the shuttle exploded. The room was completely silent now except for the alien's labored breathing. Your people had filled the medical shuttle with wounded humans who were still conscious. Still fighting, Velthan said, its voice breaking. They flew that shuttle full of your own injured soldiers directly into our headquarters. The wounded humans were screaming war cries until the moment of impact. Lieutenant Yijin stopped writing. She felt sick, but it did not stop there. Ilian went on. More medical shuttles came, each one filled with humans who should have been evacuated to safety. Instead, They had volunteered to become guided missiles. Velthan S4I's all closed at once. One shuttle was full of your children, young humans, maybe 10 or 12 years old. They had been injured in the fighting. But instead of being taken to safety, they chose to die as weapons against us, Doctor. Kim made a note to monitor the alien's heart rate more closely. This level of trauma could cause permanent psychological damage. The last shuttle that hit us was piloted by one of your medical officers, Velthan whispered, a female named Captain Seomina. She was broadcasting on all frequencies as she flew toward us. She said she was sorry for what humanity had become, but that her duty was to protect her people no matter the cost. The alien opened its eyes again, but they seemed unfocused, looking at something that was not in the room. My pack leader, Vecna the Brave, was watching through the command scope when that shuttle hit. He saw Captain Seo's face in the pilot window just before impact. She was crying, but she was also smiling. Velthan's voice became so quiet that everyone in the room had to strain to hear it. After that explosion, Vecna started making sounds I had never heard from our species before. High, keening wails like a young one who has lost its parent. He kept saying the same words over and over. They fight with their mercy. They fight with their compassion. What are these creatures? The alien looked directly at Jiho with all four eyes. That night, Vecna took his own life rather than continue fighting your people. He left a message saying that humans had broken something fundamental in his understanding of what war should be. Velthan's voice dropped to barely a whisper. That was when we knew we could not win. Not because you were stronger, but because you were willing to sacrifice everything, even your own principles, to defeat us. The interrogation room felt colder as Velthan prepared to give its final testimony. General Kim Taiho had joined the session, along with several other high-ranking officers. They all sensed that what the alien was about to say would change everything. Dr. Kim Minji watched her readings carefully. The alien's vital signs had actually stabilized, as if telling its story had somehow brought it peace. But there was something different in its eyes now, a kind of ancient sadness that made her uncomfortable. You have asked me about tactics, about weapons, about battle strategies, Velthan said, its voice clearer than it had been during the entire interrogation. But you are asking the wrong questions. Commander Park Jiho leaned back in his chair. After hours of listening to horror stories, he was not sure he wanted to hear what came next. The real question is not how humans fight, the alien continued. The real question is what humans become when they fight. Lieutenant Park So-min, who had been silent throughout most of the interrogation, felt a chill run down her spine. Something in the alien's tone suggested this was not going to be a simple military analysis. Other species in the galaxy fight for things, Velthan explained, its claws now resting peacefully on the table. We fight for a territory, for resources, for dominance, for revenge. We have rules about how fighting should be done. We have limits on what weapons can be used, what targets can be attacked, what methods are acceptable. The aliens, for eyes, moved slowly around the room, looking at each human face in turn. But humans do not fight for things. Humans fight to make sure the fighting stops forever. You do not just want to win battles. You want to make sure your enemies never want to fight you again. General Kim shifted uncomfortably in his seat. The alien's words were hitting uncomfortably close to some classified strategic documents he had read. When we threaten you, you do not just defend yourselves, Velthan continued, you transform. Everything about your species changes. Your art becomes propaganda designed to strengthen your will to fight. Your science becomes focused on creating better weapons. Your medicine becomes a tool for keeping soldiers alive longer so they can kill more enemies. The alien paused, its breathing slow and steady through the slits in its neck. Even your love becomes a weapon. You love your families so much that you will do anything to protect them. You love your friends so much that you will die for them. You love your species so much that you will sacrifice your own souls to save it. Dr. Kim made notes on her tablet, but her hands were shaking slightly. The alien psychological profile of humanity was more disturbing than any of the battle stories. "This is why we could not defeat you," Vilthan said, its voice growing stronger. "To match your methods, we would have had to become like you. We would have had to abandon everything that makes us who we are." The alien looked directly at General Kim. "Your species has a saying. If you stare into the abyss long enough, the abyss stares back into you. Fighting humans means becoming human. And that terrified us more than dying." Colonel Jung-Woo-jin, who had been quiet throughout the session, finally spoke. "What are you trying to tell us?" Vilthan's eyes focused on him with disturbing intensity. "I am trying to warn you about what you are becoming. You think you are just defending yourselves, just protecting your people. But you are changing into something new. Something that has never existed in the galaxy before." The alien's claws began to tap gently against the table, making a soft rhythm like a heartbeat. "My people have studied your history through your own records," Vilthan continued. "You have been at war with each other for thousands of years. Each conflict has made you better at fighting, better at surviving, better at turning everything round you into weapons." The room was completely silent except for the soft tapping of the alien's claws. "Now you are taking those skills and using them against other species. But here is what you do not understand. You are not just fighting us. You are teaching the entire galaxy how to fight like humans." Lieutenant Park Eugene looked up from her notes with confusion. "What do you mean?" "Every species that fights you learns your methods," Vilthan explained. "They have to, or they die. Soon, the entire galaxy will be full of species that have learned to fight like humans. Species that turn their love into weapons, their mercy into tactics, their compassion into tools of war." The alien's eyes closed, all at the same time, as if it was seeing a future that no one else could imagine. "You are creating a galaxy of beings like yourselves," it whispered. "Beings who will sacrifice anything, become anything, do anything to survive. And when that happens, when every species in the galaxy has learned to fight like humans, what do you think will happen next?" The alien opened its eyes and looked round the room one final time. "You will either unite this galaxy in peace through the same total commitment you bring to war, or you will drag every living thing into a darkness that will never end. There is no middle ground with humans. You are either salvation or destruction. And perhaps you are both." Vilthan leaned back in its chair, suddenly looking very tired. "That is my warning to you. What you do with it is your choice." The interrogation room fell silent as the weight of the alien's words settled over everyone. Present